ਕੇਸਰੀ ਨਿਸ਼ਾਨ ਨਾਲ ਜੁੜੇ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਰੇ ਦਰਸ਼ਕਾਂ ਦਾ ਨਿੱਘਾ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ। ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦੀ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਦੀ ਕਾਮਨਾ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਮੈਂ ਭੁਪਿੰਦਰ ਸਿੰਘ ਭਾਈ ਖੇਲ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦੇ ਲਈ ਨਵੇਂ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਹਾਜ਼ਰ ਹਾਂ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਨਾਮ ਹੈ ਗੋਸ਼ਟੀ ਅਰਥਾਤ ਸੰਵਾਦ, ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ, ਡਾਇਲੌਗ। ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਿੱਖ ਵਿਰਸੇ ਅਤੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਵਿਰਾਸਤ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਪੰਥਕ ਸਫ਼ਿਆਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰੇ, ਗੋਸ਼ਟੀਆਂ, ਬੈਠਕਾਂ ਜਾਂ ਸੈਮੀਨਾਰਾਂ ਦੀ ਕਾਰਵਾਈ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਂਝਾ ਕਰਾਂਗੇ, ਤਾਂ ਜੋ ਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿਦੇਸ਼ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੈਠੇ ਵਿਚਾਰਵਾਨ, ਸੂਝਵਾਨ ਪਾਠਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਵਾਬਸਤਾ ਵੀ ਕਰਾ ਸਕੀਏ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਵਿਚਾਰਸ਼ੀਲਤਾ ਨੂੰ ਹੋਰ ਵਧਾਇਆ ਜਾ ਸਕੇ। ਇਸ ਦਾ ਉਦੇਸ਼ ਇਹੀ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਵਿਚਾਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸੁਣ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਰਚਨਾਤਮਕ ਰੁਝਾਨ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਵਿੱਚ ਪੈਦਾ ਹੋਵੇ, ਲੋਕ ਪੜ੍ਹਨ ਲਿਖਣ ਅਤੇ ਇੱਕ ਸੂਝਵਾਨ ਵਿਵੇਕੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਬਣ ਕੇ ਇਸ ਪੰਥਕ ਫਿਜ਼ਾ ਨੂੰ ਮਹਿਕਾਉਣ। ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਗਾਜ਼ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਵਰਲਡ ਫੇਮਸ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜਿਸਟ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਨ ਮੋਲੀਨਰ ਦੇ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦਾ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਪਰਸਪੈਕਟਿਵ। ਇਸ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਦਾ ਆਯੋਜਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਸ਼ਾਮ ਸਿੰਘ, ਪ੍ਰੈਜ਼ੀਡੈਂਟ ਕੇਂਦਰੀ ਸ੍ਰੀ ਗੁਰੂ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਅਤੇ ਸਰਦਾਰ ਗੁਰਪ੍ਰੀਤ ਸਿੰਘ ਇੰਸਟੀਚਿਊਟ ਆਫ ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਵੱਲੋਂ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਸੰਚਾਲਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਕੇਂਦਰੀ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ ਦੇ ਜਨਰਲ ਸਕੱਤਰ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਖੁਸ਼ਹਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਜੀ ਵੱਲੋਂ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਿ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਸੁਣਵਾਈਏ, ਅਸੀਂ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਨ ਮੋਲੀਨਰ ਬਾਰੇ ਦੱਸਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ। ਆਪ ਅੱਜ ਇਸ ਵਕਤ ਜਿੰਦਲ ਸਕੂਲ ਆਫ ਇੰਟਰਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਅਫੇਅਰਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਸੋਸੀਏਟ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਹਨ। ਆਪਨੇ ਪੈਰਿਸ ਤੋਂ ਸੋਸ਼ਲ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀ ਵਿੱਚ PhD ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ, ਜਿਸ ਦਾ ਕਿ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਸੀ ਸਿੱਖ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਆਈਡੈਂਟੀਟੀ, ਨੈਰੇਟਿਵਸ ਐਂਡ ਟਰਾਂਸਨੈਸ਼ਨਲ ਪ੍ਰੈਕਟਿਸਿਸ ਇਨ ਯੂਰਪ। ਆਪਨੇ UK, ਇੰਡੀਆ ਅਤੇ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਕਾਫੀ ਫੀਲਡ ਵਰਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਨਾਲ ਹੀ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀ ਐਂਡ ਸੋਸ਼ੀਓਲੋਜੀ, ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਐਂਡ ਪੋਲੀਟਿਕਸ, ਸਿੱਖ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਐਂਡ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰਾਂਟਸ ਸਟੱਡੀਜ਼ ਦੇ ਕੋਰਸਿਸ ਵੀ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਏ ਹਨ। ਆਪ ਇੰਸਟੀਚਿਊਟ ਆਫ ਕਨਵਰਜੈਂਸ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰੈਂਟਸ ਅਤੇ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਕੰਸੋਰਸ਼ੀਅਮ ਔਨ ਮਾਈਗ੍ਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਇਸ਼ੂਜ਼ ਦੇ ਫੈਲੋ ਵੀ ਹਨ। ਇਸ ਤੋਂ ਇਲਾਵਾ ਆਪ ਆਨਲਾਈਨ ਕੋ ਐਡੀਟਰ ਹਨ ਇੱਕ ਜਰਨਲ ਦੇ, ਸਾਊਥ ਏਸ਼ੀਆ ਮਲਟੀ ਡਿਸਪਲਿਨਰੀ ਐਕੈਡਮਿਕ ਜਰਨਲ ਦੇ। ਇੱਥੇ ਦੱਸ ਦਈਏ ਕਿ ਆਪ ਨੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਵਿੱਚ ਬੜਾ ਹੀ ਐਕਟਿਵਲੀ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਿਪੇਟ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਆਪ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਦੀ ਬਹੂਰਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਬੈਠੇ ਕਿਸਾਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਸੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੂੰ, ਕ੍ਰਾਸ ਸੈਕਸ਼ਨਸ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇ, ਉੱਥੇ ਲੀਡਰਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਜਾਣੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਬਹੁਤ ਹੀ ਨੇੜੇ ਤੋਂ ਓਬਜ਼ਰਵ ਕੀਤਾ ਅਤੇ ਉਸੇ ਆਧਾਰ 'ਤੇ ਆਪ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਉੱਪਰ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਰਿਸਰਚ ਰਿਪੋਰਟ ਤਿਆਰ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਨ, ਜਿਸ ਦੀ ਇੱਕ ਝਲਕ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੱਥੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਇਸ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਬੰਧਿਤ ਕੁਝ ਸਵਾਲ ਜਵਾਬ ਆਏ, ਕੁਝ ਸੁਝਾਅ, ਕੁਝ ਟਿੱਪਣੀਆਂ, ਕੁਝ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਵਟਾਂਦਰਾ ਹੋਇਆ, ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਅਸੀਂ ਇਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਉਮੀਦ ਹੈ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਨੂੰ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹ ਉੱਦਮ ਪਸੰਦ ਆਏਗਾ।
ਸਾਡੇ ਸੌਲ 'ਚ ਸੁਸ਼ੋਭਿਤ ਭਰਾਵੋ ਤੇ ਭੈਣੋ, ਬੱਚਿਓ, ਫਤਿਹ ਦੀ ਸਾਂਝ ਕਰੀਏ ਜੀ। ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕਾ ਖਾਲਸਾ, ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਜੀ ਕੀ ਫਤਿਹ। ਮੈਂ ਆਫਕੋਰਸ ਥੋੜ੍ਹਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਮੈਂ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਾਂਗਾ, ਬਟ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਨ ਲਈ ਮੈਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਅੰਗਰੇਜ਼ੀ 'ਚ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨੀ ਪੈਣੀ ਹੈ। ਅਤੇ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੱਕ ਕਾਮਨ ਫਰੈਂਡ ਨੇ ਸਵਰਨ ਕਾਲੋਂ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੀ ਇੰਟਰੋਡਕਸ਼ਨ ਮੈਡਮ ਮੋਲੀਨਰ ਨਾਲ ਕਰਾਈ ਦਿੱਲੀ, ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲ ਕੇ ਬੇਹੱਦ ਖੁਸ਼ੀ ਹੋਈ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਿੰਨਾ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਸਪੈਸ਼ਲੀ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਉੱਤੇ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਵੈਸੇ 2006-07 ਵਿੱਚ ਵੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ 'ਚ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ। 2006-07 ਯੂ ਵੀ ਹੈ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਨ? ਯਾ। ਐਂਡ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਇੰਸਟੀਟਿਊਟ ਵੀ ਗਏ, ਉੱਥੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਇੰਟਰਵਿਊ ਲਿੱਤੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਉਸ ਟਾਈਮ ਦੇ ਪ੍ਰਧਾਨ ਸਾਹਿਬ ਦੀ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਇਹ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਹੈਗਾ, ਅੱਜ ਕੱਲ੍ਹ ਜਿੰਦਲ ਯੂਨੀਵਰਸਿਟੀ 'ਚ ਪੜ੍ਹਾਉਂਦੇ ਨੇ, ਅਤੇ ਪੋਲੀਟੀਕਲ ਸਾਇੰਸ ਐਂਡ ਉਹ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸਬਜੈਕਟ ਵੀ ਹੈਗਾ। ਅਤੇ ਇਹ ਇੰਨੇ ਪ੍ਰਭਾਵਿਤ ਹੋਏ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਨਾਲ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਆਪ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਲੜਕਾ ਹੈ, ਉਹਨੇ ਸਿੱਖੀ ਧਾਰਨ ਕਰ ਲਈ ਹੈ। ਉਹ ਅੱਜ ਦੀ ਡੇਟ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਕੱਛ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਵੀਰ ਨੇ, ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਦਾ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਹੈਗਾ ਇਨ ਕੱਛ ਨਾ। ਐਂਡ ਉੱਥੇ ਹੀ ਇਜ਼ ਟਰਾਈਂਗ ਟੂ ਇਨਕਰੇਜ ਦੈਮ ਇਨ ਆਲਟਰਨੇਟ sources of how to generate income, in terms of solar panels and this, that and the other, alternate energy systems ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਇਆ। ਸੋ ਕਹਿਣ ਦਾ ਭਾਵ ਹੈਗਾ ਕਿ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਬੀਇੰਗ ਫ੍ਰੈਂਚ ਇਨ ਐਨੀ ਕੇਸ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਾਫੀ ਉਹ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਸੈਕੂਲਰਿਜ਼ਮ ਦਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਹੀ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਕਨਸਟੀਟਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਐਂਡ ਐਵਰੀਥਿੰਗ। ਹਾਲਾਂਕਿ ਜਦੋਂ ਮੈਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕਰ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ ਸਾਡੀ ਦਸਤਾਰ ਦੇ ਮਸਲੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਹੋਈ ਸੀਗੀ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਉਹ ਸੈਕੂਲਰਿਜ਼ਮ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ, your secularism, idea of secularism is a little different to our way of thinking। ਸਾਡਾ ਥੋੜਾ ਜਿਹਾ ਇਨਕਲੂਸਿਵ ਜਿਹਾ ਹੈਗਾ, ਤੁਹਾਡਾ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਹਰ ਇੱਕ ਬੰਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਜਿਹਾ ਜੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਏ। ਸੋ ਸ਼ੀ ਆਫ ਕੋਰਸ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਤੇ ਵੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕੰਮ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਕਈ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੰਗਲੈਂਡ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਾ ਕੇ, ਫਰਾਂਸ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਥਾਵਾਂ 'ਤੇ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ ਅਤੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਸੰਪਰਕ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਦਿੱਲੀ ਹੁਣ ਆ ਗਏ ਨੇ, ਹੁਣ ਦਿੱਲੀ ਦੇ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਵਾਰਤਾਲਾਪ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈਗਾ ਉਹ ਵੀ ਉਹ ਪੁੱਛਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਕੌਣ ਨੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਦਿੱਲੀ 'ਚ ਮੈਂ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਜਿਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਮਿਲ ਸਕਦੀ ਹਾਂ। ਅਤੇ ਕੁਦਰਤੀ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਦੌਰਾ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ ਦਾ ਲੱਗ ਗਿਆ ਅਤੇ ਆਈ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟਡ ਹਰ, ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਅਤੇ ਉਹ ਬੜੇ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿਡ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਇੱਥੇ ਆ ਕੇ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੰਦਿਆਂ ਨਾਲ ਮਿਲਣ। ਅਤੇ ਮੈਂ ਭਾਜੀ ਖੁਸ਼ਹਾਲ ਨੂੰ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕੀਤੀ ਸੀਗੀ। ਅਨਫੋਰਚੂਨੇਟਲੀ ਮੈਂ ਆਪ ਚੰਡੀਗੜ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਵੀਕਐਂਡ 'ਤੇ, ਅਤੇ ਪਰਸੋਂ ਵੀ ਸਾਡੇ ਕੋਲ ਇੱਥੇ ਕੇਂਦਰੀ ਸਿੰਘ ਸਭਾ 'ਚ ਆਏ ਸੀਗੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਸ਼ੀ ਵਾਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿਡ ਇਨ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੋਜ਼ ਪੀਪਲ ਹੂ ਵਰ ਵੈਲ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਇਨਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਤਾਂ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ ਸਾਰਾ ਹੀ ਪੰਜਾਬ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ, ਬਟ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਇਨਵੋਲਵ ਸੀਗੇ ਸ਼ੀ ਵਾਜ਼ ਵੈਰੀ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਿਡ ਇਨ ਮੀਟਿੰਗ ਦੈਮ। ਸੋ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਇਹ ਮਿਲੇ ਨੇ ਅਤੇ ਬਹੁਤਾ ਨਾ ਕਹਿੰਦਾ ਹੋਇਆ ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਮੈਡਮ ਕ੍ਰਿਸਟੀਨ ਮੋਲਿਨੇ ਨੂੰ ਮੈਂ ਰਿਕੁਐਸਟ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆ ਕੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਵਿਚਾਰ ਰੱਖਣਗੇ ਇਹ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਟੌਪਿਕ 'ਤੇ। ਵੈਸੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਹਿੰਦੇ ਸੀਗੇ ਕਿ ਵੀ ਇਹ ਸਿੱਖਾਂ ਬਾਰੇ ਵੀ ਗੱਲ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਜੀ, ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਸਿੱਖ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ, ਪਰ ਅੱਜ ਦਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਹਾਲਾਤ ਇਹੋ ਜਿਹੇ ਨੇ, ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੇ ਆਪਣਾ ਟੌਪਿਕ ਸਿਰਫ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਹੈ ਐਗਰੇਰੀਅਨ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਕਿਸਾਨ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਉੱਤੇ ਫਰੋਮ ਐਨ ਐਂਥਰੋਪੋਲੋਜੀਕਲ ਵਿਊ ਉਹ ਤੁਹਾਡੇ ਮੂਹਰੇ ਪੇਸ਼ ਕਰਨਗੇ ਜੀ। ਉਸ ਤੋਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਵੀ ਸਵਾਲ ਕੋਈ ਵੀ ਪੁੱਛਣਾ ਚਾਹਵੇ ਉਹ ਜ਼ਰੂਰ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਜਵਾਬ ਦੇਣ ਦੀ ਕੋਸ਼ਿਸ਼ ਕਰੇ।
The Sikh diaspora in Europe. So, as I told you, I am from France, I am an anthropologist, and I am specialized in the study of Sikh and Punjabi diaspora and migration patterns to Europe. And for the past 20 years now, I have been looking at several aspects of that topic. So, one of the major topic I have been looking at are Sikhs in the UK, so British Sikhs. You must be aware of the Turban campaign that they have fought and successfully fought. And I have been looking at Sikh identity construction process in the UK. So that's one thing that occupied me for a number of years. But since I was in France and there was a small but growing Sikh community, then I started looking at French Sikhs, studying French Sikhs, and particularly looking at the institutionalization process of the French Sikh community through the study of the main Gurdwara, which is Singh Sabha Gurdwara in Paris, and how through this institutionalization process through the management, the construction and the management of a place of worship, how French Sikhs have encountered French secularism, which is called laicity, as you know. So that's another strand of my research. Third strand of research, which has now occupied me till I joined Jindal, which was really occupying me the most, was looking at the impacts of the closure of borders in Europe and of stringent European migration policies. So the impact on the lives of Sikh migrants in Paris, particularly irregular migrants. So I've been very much researching on that, doing interviews, a few publications on this aspect, which is, interestingly, irregular migration is an understudied topic in this otherwise very vibrant academic field of Sikh diaspora, and it is an understudied field, and I think it's very important to study that because it's a major trend. I mean, as you know, it has become a major trend of Sikh migration and mobility patterns to the West. So I have in particular looked at the, how their irregular status, how their, underground life, if I might say, impacts on the construction of those Sikh migrants' masculinity. So the relation between irregular status and masculinity has been something I have been interested in. Gender, but gender doesn't only mean, studying women migrant, it also means studying men migrant. So that's a third strand of research, and a fourth strand of research has been, and that's when I got in touch, that's why I got in touch originally some years ago with the Institute of Sikh Studies, because I was working at the time, and I'm planning to work again also, on Sikh responses and Sikh responses to and relations with Hindutva and RSS, as well as connecting that with Sikh minority status in India as well as in the West. So that's, to put a broader perspective, to give you a broader perspective of what I have been interested in researching. And as you can see from my presentation, from my introduction, I am not a specialist at all of agrarian issues. I am, struggling with the agrarian understanding, the agrarian economy, agrarian distress, and so on, and all that. But I actually became interested in the Andolan because of the Sikh dimension, because of the religious dimension. And also because of the transnational dimension, because as you are aware, the NRI's Sikh diaspora is, as from the beginning, supported the Andolan, particularly in countries such as Canada, the US, and the UK. So I am looking at that also. So my interest in the Andolan is, from a very specific angle. It's from the religious identity aspect and the transnational aspect. Okay. So before proceeding further, I wanted to apologize because I'm not going to present something, very well structured, very elaborate, or very detailed. Because actually we had, when I met Gurpreet long time back, 3 weeks back, we had in mind that I would present my research on Sikhs in France, because I have, worked a lot on that, and I have a lot of things to say, and I think it also, is of interest for Sikhs in Chandigarh and in Punjab. But then, the news brought to the forefront the Andolan, and I think it was very good of Gurpreet to also suggest that instead of talking about Sikhs in France, which I can do at a later stage, I should engage with you by presenting you the very basic and preliminary research findings that I have. So don't expect anything grand or it's going to be very basic, and it's a challenge actually to present something about the Andolan, about Sikhs in front of an audience who is actually more knowledgeable than I am. So usually I am presenting those data, or I am writing for either a French audience or English-speaking audience in the West. So I have to explain everything, obviously. But here you are probably more knowledgeable than I am. But anyhow, I think I will try my best. And what I am hoping is that whatever little bit of information and insight I am providing, you will add to it and ask questions after that. So before proceeding, I would like briefly to tell you about the outcome of that research. So I have been conducting a few interviews in December, Jan, then March in Singhu, and very recently in Tikri. And what is going to be the outcome, in terms of publication? So actually, I am working with a PhD student who happens to be my son. We are working, the two of us, on an edited book. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about that book. So this book is comprising, it's in the process, it's not completed yet, but we have sent a book proposal to a publisher, English-speaking publisher, and the book comprises some of the papers that were presented at an online conference that was held in Jindal in May. So basically, the point of that book is to look through a multidisciplinary perspective at the Andolan and to study the historical, social, and religious roots of the movement. Study also its unique blend of Marxism, Sikhism, popular culture of resistance. Looking also at how the Andolan is part of larger debates, right? Long struggles on the agrarian question as a form of resistance. Also, it can also be understood as a form of resistance against corporatization of agriculture. But also, if we look at it from a political angle, it can be looked at as a form of resistance and dissent against authoritarian populism and Hindu majoritarianism. So, what are the questions we are planning to address in that book through the contributions from 15 to 20 authors? We are going to look at how, if we can draw a comparison between this Andolan, this movement, and previous resistance and contestation movements in India, as well as globally. We are going to explore the role played by regional, religious, as well as caste and gender identities in the movement. We are going also to analyze, identify the tools, the patterns of mobilization used by the protesters, and what we consider as the transformative potential of the Andolan. So basically, the book is at the intersection of three research fields. Obviously, agrarian studies, which is the specialization of that co-author of mine, the field of the sociology of social movements, and third field, Punjab and Sikh studies, which is my field. So that's what is ahead. Let me go very quickly through the different, sections of the book. So we have a section introducing the agrarian question in India. We also have a next section on agrarian crisis and capitalism in Punjab. So that's a political economy section on Punjab agrarian structure. Then we have another section on the role played by caste, class, and gender in the movement. Another section of the book will be focusing on the role of media, which is a crucial one, and two Punjabi journalists, Gurshamshir and Amandeep Sandhu, will be writing a chapter on that. Another section on religion, radical politics, and diaspora mobilization. And the final concluding chapter would consist of interviews with union leaders, activists, and artists. So that's what is going to keep us busy for the next few months. So now I'll come to what has been a little bit my research focus on this Andolan. So I told you I am looking at Sikhi, the role of Sikhi in the Andolan as a major source of inspiration, as a tool of mobilization for the protests, by providing very potent symbols, by providing a pool of heroic figures drawn from Sikh history, but also from the anti-colonial struggle. So basically, I am trying to understand how Sikh ethos is a driving force in this movement, in this social movement, through religious institutions and practices such as langar, through the notion, the concept of chardikala, and the sanctity of agricultural labor. So maybe I'll start with telling you a little bit about my theoretical framework, because that's what we use in the social sciences. conceptual tools and theoretical frameworks. So far it's not very elaborate, it's a bit primitive, but I have to work on that a little bit. So I think I will probably borrow my conceptual tools from sociology, although I am an anthropologist, but they are sister disciplines anyhow. So from sociology of religion and from the sociology of social movement. So basically I'm going to look at the intersection between social movements and the role played by faith and by religion. And interestingly, it's a relatively unexplored research topic. I mean, there have been a few publications that have looked from the 1990s onwards at the role played by religion, by faith, in several contemporary social and political movements. It is understudied. So, for example, before telling you why it is understudied, the social movement I have in mind in the West that have been studied under that theoretical framework, we can name, for example, liberation theology in South America that intersected Marxism and Christianity. We can also have in mind the civil rights movement, where obviously religion has played, in the US, where religion has played a major role. We can also think about Solidarność in Poland. So that's, important social movements in the West. And if we look at India and South Asia as a whole, there is a much longer history actually of, social and religious movement in the subcontinent, starting as early as the Bhakti movement with, figures such as Guru Nanak or Kabir and so on. So India has a long history as well of, how religion can play a liberating and a progressist role. So, just briefly to define what is a social movement. So, a social movement is a collective and organized effort to change laws. So that's a case in point. Collective and organized effort to change laws, policies, or practices by a group of people who share common interests, but who do not have the power to do so through conventional political channels. So they do it, those people who share common interests, they will do it outside the sphere of established politics, of established political institutions. So it's beyond the sphere of political parties, voting system, parliament, and government. So as I was saying, the role of religion has tended to be ignored by specialists of social movements. The reason is related to the history of, the discipline of sociology, how much it draws from Marxism, and it's also related to the classic Marxist understanding of religion as false consciousness, as you are aware, and as a false alternative to collective political action. Okay? So that's the general frame of mind, which has been very prevalent in the study of social movement. And this has, this explains why the importance, the role played by religion and faith has been understudied so far. So according to that view, religion only makes the oppressed classes accept their oppression, while political radicalism, revolution, urges them to question the status quo and an oppressive political system. So obviously it's a lot more complex than that, and I think some of the movement that India has witnessed in the recent history, particularly the Andolan, helps to complexify, to nuance that dichotomy between, on the one side, religion as an oppressive or conservative force, and on one side, radical politics. So this understanding has completely changed with the study of what has been termed the new social movements that emerged in the 60s and 70s. I will not go into the details of that. So now there is a body of research, emerging body of research on social and religious movements. And I will try very briefly to highlight some of the key findings of that body of research. So, for instance, they have highlighted that social and religious movements can be a source of empowerment, okay? Spiritual as well as political empowerment. So this notion of empowerment that you are familiar with and that we can define as the capacity of people to intervene directly in problems they are concerned with, and to define and to decide their collective and individual destiny. So this notion of empowerment that is, related to, that is a result of those social and religious movements. This notion of empowerment is, I think, very important to interrogate in the context of the Andolan. So, what are the groups that took part in the Andolan that have been or that have strived to be empowered by it? So we might think about, globally speaking, one of the reasons, if we frame it as, a movement that is related to a search of empowerment, okay? So we might be thinking in terms of the farmers who joined the Andolan. One major motive behind the Andolan was the protest of farmers against laws that they perceived would disempower them. Okay, so we can frame that Andolan as a struggle against disempowerment because it would deprive them of their land and livelihood. And then secondly, we can look at, as I was saying, empowerment and what kind of groups would be empowered, or at least would seek some form of empowerment as part of the Andolan. So obviously, one of the major groups that was probably expecting to be empowered, and that was the backbone of the protest, the small and marginal farmers. Second group that, as you know, has been quite visible in the protest are women. And third group are Dalits and landless laborers. So we have, to question, and I have to question this notion of empowerment as applied to those three groups. So the issue is not only empowerment within the movement, but whether this Andolan will empower those groups on the long term. Once the Andolan is, finished, and that's apparently very soon, once everybody goes back home, what would be the long-term effect of the Andolan, if any, and that's something we discuss on Monday. What will be the long-term effects of the Andolan on the patriarchal and casteist social fabric of Punjab? So that's empowerment as, something, a key term in the study of social and religious movement. Another key term would be, if we look at post-1970s social movement worldwide, another characteristic and key term is the global scope. So globalization, okay? They are global, most of them are global in scope, in effects, in actions, and in practices. So here again, the Andolan is, a very interesting case study because it has a very regional dimension, Punjab, Haryana, Western UP. It is related to the specificities of agriculture and agricultural markets there, but it also has some national ambitions and purposes, and it has a global dimension. So I told you about the participation, the support provided by the diaspora with transnationalizing the movement. That's one thing, but it also has, this Andolan is global in the sense that it addresses a crucial issue that is of interest to us all on the planet, such as food security, such as the economic sustainability of small-scale family farming against corporate-driven agriculture. So this Andolan is really global in those various senses. This is also global because it relates, so I'm not clear yet how it has established or not connections with, there is this national organization of small peasant farmers called Via Campesina. So I'm not clear if there has been formal connections or not, but you must have seen, Facebook videos and photos taken of, I remember the latest I saw was Brazilian farmers, small farmers supporting the Andolan. But whatever formal connection there are at least a commonality of issues. So these issues, the sustainability, economic sustainability of small-scale farming, food security and sovereignty, and so on, these issues have been at the core of the struggle fought by this international organization of small peasants, Via Campesina, that defends peasant agriculture, food security as a way to promote social justice, dignity, and sustainability of agricultural work. So there is definitely a common ground between those various protests, organizations, and mobilization at a global scale. So what is important also to look at is how much the Andolan, the Kisan Andolan, is part of much larger debates, much larger and very important struggles at the global level. And I think people here, but also people internationally, are well aware of that. So let me now come to what I have done so far. So I have been looking, for instance, at the centrality of Langar. So let me talk to you about it a little bit. So centrality of the Langar, it's very visible, very obvious, so there is no need for much elaboration. But what I found interesting is the centrality of the Langar plays at different levels. So if we start at a very practical level, to sustain a movement on such a long period, at a very basic level, you need to feed the protesters. Okay. So at a practical level, Langar, filled that very urgent need. But there is also a symbolic and obviously spiritual dimension of Langar. So at the symbolic level, Langar reasserts the importance of farming, of food production. It also, makes visible the connection between farming, food protection, and the food we cook and eat. Also, what is very striking with Langar in the protest and more globally is the inclusiveness of Langar. Okay? So the fact that people are feeding, the protesters were feeding everyone, irrespective of social, religious, and caste background. And obviously this resonates with the religious dimension of Langar, and since, as you was meant as an egalitarian and anti-caste institution. So I am also looking at this, religious, spiritual aspect of Langar, which I think is very important, and to connect that dimension with the other dimension. So I see Langar as a multi-dimensional practice in the protest. And if we look at the religious, spiritual aspect, as you know, Guru Nanak insisted on the high value of manual work, particularly of agricultural labor. So he was tilling his own fields for the past 17 years of his life. And you also know better than I do the fact that the Adigaran contains many images, references, metaphors of cultivation, harvests, and about the beauty of nature. So this is something I am trying to connect with the symbolic also dimension of Langar in the context of that protest. So at a symbolic level, Langar actually metaphorically or symbolically points to a world where Food is grown, food is prepared, served in common, not for profit, not for commercial profit, but to sustain the community and protect the earth. So I think it's a very powerful symbol, and it's also a very powerful reminder of the importance of food security and food sovereignty. So it's, many levels are there. Another level which I am very interested in, and that's something I talked yesterday with Santosh, who is here and who has been attending the protest in December. So the fact that cooking and serving food to anyone, irrespective of, as I said earlier, social, religious, caste background, is political. Okay, it's spiritual, it's humanitarian, whatever you call it, but I think it is also a very powerful act of protest, particularly in the political environment of India, which is so divisive, constantly targeting minorities and so on. So I think Langar has opened up in a very important way, new spaces of solidarities, bridging with various sections of society, well beyond farming section. And finally, at a final level, although I'm sure there are many more levels of Langar that I haven't explored yet, but the one that was very strong, I think, is the transformative dimension of cooking together, serving food, eating together. So Santosh was telling me how it has been very important for her experience of the protest, how, by serving food, she was made part of the protest. And by feeding the local, the visitors, the supporters that used to visit a lot in December and January, less so afterwards, but how the farmers Langar made those people part of the protests, and how it has established a very strong, almost intimate bond between the farmers and those visitors. So it's the bond of shared food, which is, typically anthropological topic of study. So I have to explore that. I was thinking to relate that to the symbolic and religious meaning of prasad. So I have to work on that a little bit more. So these reflections, explorations around Langar in the context of the protest are actually part of wider research I have in mind on Seva. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that now, but I have been thinking, I have been struck, by the very important role that Seva is playing in Sikh social and religious life. And I have explored that for some years in the diaspora context, so in the UK and in France. And I was thinking to also look into it in the Indian context. So finally, I would like to say a few words about the notion of Chardikala. Because I think it has been very important to sustain the protest despite all the odds that the farmers have faced. So I haven't read much in a social science framework about Chardikala. It's a very interesting notion, actually. People have usually, when the comparison is drawn with Western context, the psychological concepts that is usually compared with Chardikala is that of resilience. Okay, so resilience has become, a very fashionable, very prevalent in psychology, and it can be defined as the ability of groups and individuals to bounce back, to maintain their core functioning, and to adapt positively in the face of adversity. So basically, I think my limited understanding of Chardikala, I think Chardikala is a richer notion than resilience, and is a more dynamic concept than resilience. Because, as you know, it refers to that state of mind of relentless optimism, the aspiration also to maintain that optimism, that spirit. And it implies something which is not in resilience, in the concept of resilience. It also implies dedication to and contentment with God's will during times of adversity. What also is very particular about the Sikh notion of Chardikala is its very strong collective aspect that was very visible in the farmers' protest. And the dynamic side is that it's not something innate. You are not born with Chardikala, what I understand of it, but this is something you have to achieve through practice, through prayers. So I thought it's something I have to work on. I don't have much so far to present you, but that's a notion I want to interrogate and further. So I was telling you that I haven't come across much conceptualization, I mean, outside of the theological literature, but in social sciences I haven't read much about Chardikala. However, it has been used repeatedly in the US, in the post-9/11 US context, to describe Sikh response to hate crimes, supremacist violence, and so on. So, if you are familiar with US Sikh prominent figures such as Simranjit Singh, he has written quite a lot about his experience of growing and as a turban Sikh in the US, and he has been using a lot this notion of Chardikala, which he translates and elaborates as resilience. And to him, so in some of his writings for the American press and for blogs and so on, so he has started using him and other American Sikhs have started to use this notion of Chardikala, this concept of Chardikala, to refer to how Sikhs respond individually and collectively to challenges, more particularly to situations of state repression, violence, and so on, and how they deal with loss and pain. So they were, for example, in quite an interesting article, he was explaining how Chardikala as a concept and as a practice has empowered and helped him to overcome traumatic events. And another writer, a PhD student, American Sikh PhD student, was also explaining that she sees Chardikala as a call to action. So according to her, it's productive because it allows people to move on. And it involves both communal strength and personal reliance. So I've been looking at how, and I want to work on how Chardikala as a concept, as a practice, has been a driving force in the protests, both at individual and collective level. So I cannot tell you much more, but I am in the thinking about conducting more interviews and interrogating that notion. So now, very briefly, the other aspects I am interested in, I will not elaborate much about them because, as I told you, it's very much a work in progress. So, I'm interested in looking at how the protest, the movement, well, whatever we call it, the Andolan, has developed its own rituals, its own symbols, based on a mix of socialist, Marxist, and Sikh references. So the flags of leftist unions, the presence of Sikh organizations such as Khalsa Aids setting up tents, religious rituals being conducted on the protest sites, the Sikh religious slogans being very prominent during the speeches on stage. I am also looking at the iconography of the protest, so the very rich, images, posters, the icons that are displayed everywhere in Singhu and in Tikri, these icons of dissent, of deviance that inspired the farmers. And beyond the farmers, I think inspiration goes beyond the farmer. So looking at the iconography of the protest and which historical figures are there as an inspiration for the farmers. So including Guru Nanak, including Banda Singh Bahadur, including the leaders of past peasant struggles such as Ajit Singh, including also heroes of the anti-colonial and revolutionary struggles such as Bhagat Singh, but also Dr. Ambedkar, although he was not as prominent as as in the anti-CA protest, but still he was there, and so on. So looking at the iconography, also looking at the series of commemorative events that the Morcha has organized. So Santosh was telling me yesterday about the very big event she and a group of students from Chandigarh University organized in mid-January, where for one full day they managed the stage, and it was to celebrate not Women's Day but something, I forgot what was it to celebrate. You tell us. So I'm looking at these commemorative events, organized by the movement. So the one I was just mentioning, the May Day symbolizing the working class struggles, the Guru Ravidas Jayanti, Dr. Ambedkar Jayanti, and so on, and how they, these events, commemorative events, how this iconography is, has succeeded has helped the Andolan to put across their message that the Andolan is not just about farming laws. It's not just about farmers. It's part of a larger struggle for equality, social justice, empowerment of all citizens. So that's another thing I want to look at. Secondly, I also want to look at the experiential aspect. Does it make sense in English, or am I just making up a word? Experiential aspect of the movement. What has been, the intimate, personal experience of the movement for the protesters, for those who participated at the protest sites, the farmers across generations, the women, obviously, particularly rural women who are usually confined to the domestic sphere. And also another very interesting aspect to explore is the experience by the youth of that movement, and the lessons learned by the youth who took part either directly or online. I have interviewed a few people, a few youngsters in the UK, and they were extremely involved in organizing rallies there. So what are the lessons for the next generation? How a new generation of youth activists has emerged from the movement. So this aspect could be termed as the transformative dimension of the struggle. Okay? And finally, something I am also very interested in is looking at how the protest has opened up new spaces of solidarity. So this is related to this earlier work I had done on Sikh minority status and their response to Hindutva. So I will be looking, and I have started looking at, new spaces of solidarity opened up by this protest, particularly in relations to other minorities, amongst other Muslims, and Muslims' support to the protests, and so on. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. We can ask questions.
Yes.
ਮੈਡਮ ਦਾ ਬਹੁਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਧੰਨਵਾਦ, ਜਿਨ੍ਹਾਂ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਦੇ ਆਪਣੀ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਦੇ ਆਧਾਰ ਤੇ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਆ ਹੋਰ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਸੈਂਸਸ ਨੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਥਰੂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਸਮਝਣ ਦਾ ਯਤਨ ਕੀਤਾ ਹੈ। ਸੋ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਸਾਡਾ ਸੰਘਰਸ਼ ਹੈ ਇਹ ਸਾਡੀ ਲਾਈਫ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਇੱਕ ਬਹੁਤ ਵੱਡੀ ਘਟਨਾ ਹੈ, ਇੱਕ ਵੱਡਾ ਇਵੈਂਟ ਹੈ। ਇਹਨੂੰ ਵੱਖ-ਵੱਖ ਐਂਗਲ ਤੋਂ ਹਾਲੇ ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਇਹਦੀ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਹੋਣੀ ਹੈ, ਬਹੁਤ ਸਾਰੇ ਲੋਕ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਆ ਆਲਰੇਡੀ, ਹੋਰ ਵੀ ਚੱਲ ਰਹੀ ਹੈ। ਸੋ
ਨਾਰਮਲੀ ਹੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਰਹਿੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਉਸ ਪੱਧਰ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ। ਪੰਜਾਬ ਦੀ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ 'ਚ ਕਾਫੀ ਲੰਮੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਬਾਅਦ ਇਹ ਮਾਸ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇੰਡੀਅਨ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਤੇ 2-3 ਤਾਂ ਕੁਐਸਚਨ ਨੇ ਇਸ ਲੈਕਚਰ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਲੇਟਡ ਜਿਹੜੇ ਜਿਹਨੂੰ ਐਲੈਬੋਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦੀ ਮੰਗ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਮੇਰੇ ਖਿਆਲ। ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮੈਨੂੰ ਨੇ ਸਿੱਖ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਖਾਸ ਤੌਰ 'ਤੇ ਯੂਰਪੀਅਨ ਸਿੱਖਸ ਦਾ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਐਂਗਲ ਹੈ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਹੈ ਪੰਜਾਬੀ ਉਸ 'ਤੇ ਥਰੂ ਆਊਟ ਵਰਲਡ ਮਾਸ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟਸ ਦਾ ਹਿਸਟਰੀ ਹੈ ਉਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਦਾ ਰੋਲ ਜਿਹੜਾ ਫਾਰਮਰ ਸਟਰਗਲ ਹੈ ਬਹੁਤ ਮੱਚ ਬੈਟਰ ਰੋਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਰਿਹਾ ਹੈ ਸਾਡੇ ਇਸ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕਿ ਅਦਰ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀਜ਼ ਜਦੋਂ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ 'ਚ ਹੁੰਦੀਆਂ ਨੇ ਅਦਰ ਸੈਕਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਸੋਸਾਇਟੀ ਦਾ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਕੀ ਉਵੇਂ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ, ਉਸ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ ਸੇਮ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਰਿਐਕਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ, ਸੇਮ ਤਰੀਕੇ ਨਾਲ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਟ ਨਹੀਂ ਕਰਦਾ। ਕੋਈ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਸੈਪਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਹੈ, ਕੋਈ ਅਲੱਗਗੀ ਹੈ, ਰਿਐਕਸ਼ਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਕੋਈ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸਿਸ ਹੈ ਨੇ ਕਿ ਐਜ ਏ ਸਿੱਖ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਮੋਰ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਡ ਹੁੰਦੀ ਹੈ, ਉਹਦਾ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਮੋਰ ਇੰਟਰਸਟਡ ਹੁੰਦਾ ਹੈ ਆਪਣੇ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੂਵਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਨਾਲ। ਕੀ ਬਿਹੇਵੀਅਰ ਪੈਟਰਨ 'ਚ ਚੇਂਜਸ ਨੇ ਦੂਸਰੇ ਡਾਇਸਪੋਰਾ ਦੇ ਮਾਮਲੇ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ। ਸੈਕੰਡ, ਵੂਮਨ ਪਾਰਟਿਸਿਪੇਸ਼ਨ ਇਨ ਦ ਸਟਰਗਲ ਹੈ। फर्स्ट टाइम Sikh religion or diaspora or awareness or women the participation the concept already see इस अंदोलन च क्यों वूमेन पार्टिसिपेशन विजिबली दिखाई देती है, इस तो पहला इस लैवल की उसका साइज क्यों नहीं है, ये कोई कॉन्सैप्ट या रियलिटी चेंज है या कि रीजन की ने बिहाइंड वूमेन पार्टिसिपेशन। थर्ड, दो गल्लां सीगियां, दो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज सिखिज्म एंड मार्क्सिज्म डिबेट रही है इस अंदोलन के दौरान भी, मार्क्सिज्म एंड सिखिज्म यू आल्सो कोट मार्क्सिज्म और सिखिज्म पैटर्न बिटवीन टू थॉट्स but you feel the contribution of my concept or background or struggle motivation सिखिज्म ਦਾ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਜ਼ਿਕਰ ਕੀਤਾ ਉਹ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਹੈ ਉਸ ਸਾਰੇ ਪੈਟਰਨ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਜਦ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਟੱਡੀ ਕਰਦੇ ਹੋ ਜਾਂ ਇਸ ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਬਾਕੀ ਸਿਖਿज्म ਦੇ ਨੋਸ਼ਨ ਨੇ ਬਿਲਕੁਲ ਸ਼ਾਇਦ ਮਾਰਕਸਿਸਟ ਵੀ ਓਨ ਕਰਦੇ ਨੇ ਇਹਨੂੰ ਨੋਸ਼ਨ ਆਫ ਚੜ੍ਹਦੀ ਕਲਾ ਨੂੰ, ਲੰਗਰ ਨੂੰ, ਸੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ, ਪੰਗਤ ਨੂੰ, ਜਿੰਨਾ ਵੀ ਇੱਕ ਸੋਲੀਡੈਰਿਟੀ ਦਾ ਸਿਸਟਮ ਹੈ ਤੇ ਇਹਦੇ 'ਚ ਕੀ ਮਤਲਬ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਹੈ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੋਨਾਂ 'ਚ। ਇਹ ਜੇ ਕੰਟਰੋਵਰਸੀਅਲ ਪੁਆਇੰਟ ਆਫ ਵਿਊ ਵੀ ਰਹੇ, ਡਿਬੇਟ ਵੀ ਚੱਲੀ ਔਰ ਇੱਕ ਲੈਵਲ ਦਾ ਸਿਮਿਲੈਰਿਟੀ ਵੀ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਮੰਨਿਆ ਤਾਂ ਇਹੀ ਜਾਂਦਾ ਕਿ ਸਿੱਖਿਜ਼ਮ ਵੀ ਡਾਟ ਰੋਡਨ ਦਾ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਹੈ ਔਰ ਮਾਰਕਸਿਜ਼ਮ ਵੀ ਕਹਿਣ ਨੂੰ ਡਾਟ ਰੋਡਨ ਦਾ ਇਹ ਰਿਲੀਜਨ ਹੈ, ਮਤਲਬ ਲਿਬਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਦਾ ਇੱਕ ਤੌਰ ਤਰੀਕਾ, ਲਿਬਰੇਸ਼ਨ ਏਮ ਹੈ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਦਾ। ਦੋਨਾਂ 'ਚ ਡਿਫਰੈਂਸ ਕੰਟਰਡਿਕਸ਼ਨ ਕਿਉਂ ਕ੍ਰੀਏਟ ਹੋਈ ਇਸ ਅੰਦੋਲਨ ਦੇ ਦੌਰਾਨ ਔਰ ਦੋਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਕੰਟਰੀਬਿਊਸ਼ਨ ਕੀ ਹੈ?
Was massively supported by Sikhs, massively opposed by some sections of Hindus, some section of British Hindus, particularly Gujaratis, you know, who are supporting the BJP. And that is some people from Leicester who told me that when they organized a rally in December in support of the movement, there is a very important Gujarati Hindu community in Leicester which has some jewelry shops in one specific road in Leicester, and they strongly opposed the movement. And also there has been a lot of attempts by the Indian government to defame the movement, to send information kits about the law, promoting the laws, and they were sent on a massive scale to British MPs. And as you probably know, there was a debate. So the British Sikhs have campaigned very much in December, January and February under difficult circumstances because, as you know, there were lockdown and rallies were not authorized, and the car rallies. And they campaigned and were successful in having a debate officially, I mean, formally organized in the British Parliament in March. And if you remember the Indian media coverage of that discussion and debate, you know, about democratic rights in India, it was very antagonistic. So that's one of I don't have an answer to your question because that's one of the things I want to explore. I have been looking a lot, I have published a bit on the relations between British Sikhs and Muslims in the past. And as you know, they are not very cordial. There are points of contentions and conflict. So I am trying to see if this particular Andolan will reshape intercommunity relations among British Asians, if it will have an impact.
Vaheguru Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ki Fateh. In this agitation, one aspect that is totally not projected in the paper and elsewise is the land holding. What is the economic unit today which can produce enough sustenance for the family? And what is the minimum unit which can be mechanized that has not been taken care of at all? Right from day one, I mean, after partition, there have been ceilings on land holding coming down from 30 acres and mechanized farming being exempted, then they put on some orchard would be exempted. Now gradually it has come down. Now I don't think if the present survey of Punjab holding would be more than 2 or 3 acres per family. Now this is distribution of poverty. Unless this thing is taken care of, we cannot sustain agriculture. The problem is that the agriculture, there are two different aspects in the angles in the politics. One is the left wing. They are out to reduce it according to the Marxist problem. The other is representing the landlords, not landlords, but the military multimillionaires as they are. Now, if you can expand a business, why can't agriculture expand? If I want to invest, I want to 10 acres of land to, expand my venture. Where will I get it? Now, there has to be a certain, what you call joint effort on the land division and its management and its marketing. Unless we reach there, now, suicide is a very difficult thing to do, but when you have 4 acres of land, you have 2 sons, it goes to 2, then it goes to 1, and where are they going to sustain that? The cost of living is going up. Now, this is something which I would like to suggest that we should take care of, and then we can do something. Thank you very much.
ਹੁਣ ਮੈਂ ਬੇਨਤੀ ਕਰਦਾ ਕਿ ਹਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਪ੍ਰੋਫੈਸਰ ਹਰਪਾਲ ਸਿੰਘ ਨੂੰ ਕਿ ਉਹ
different speakers before me, they have presented a view, more penetrating view than that meets the eye, more than the common perception. The two girls, particularly the first girl who belonged to a family which a male member committed suicide, I saw in her conclusion a persisting fear that the repeal of 3 laws won't make any difference to that section, and it offers no remedy to that. The second girl, who was also a researcher, she also gave, and so was our senior Bhai Ashok Singh Bagadiyan ji. I am in agreement with his comments, but except one perception that the land holding is the law of land holding is there in India, but in Punjab it was never enforced. There were families who lost land through generational subdivisions, but at the same time, there are families who multiplied their land 3, 4, 5 times to the ceiling that has been fixed at the national level. You can see very commonly, you go out and you will see persons holding much beyond the ceiling of 18 acres of that. I shall make 2-3 observations, not take more than much of your time. First was the learned professor, Christine. She made very good observations, and rightly, in most of the cases, she stayed away from conclusions because conclusions have yet to crop up in a proper manner. Role of Sikhi, she talked the role of Sikhi in the agitation. The role, what Sikhi is, the lives of the Gurus, and the message enshrined in Guru Granth. This is the Sikhi. Now, the langar, to sustain the movement, as the learned professor has concluded, that to sustain the movement at such a large scale, langar is an essential or food supply, you can say. But in Sikh parlance, no doubt, this, I quote one instance of a Sikh, that seva, if seva is all self-serving, then it is not at all a seva in Sikhism. I may remind you the popular slogan of a former chief minister who used to say, Raj nahi seva. And through that, the personal perception of seva that he made, he finally destroyed the entire Punjab, and the mess that has been created, the decay, it has resulted from that kind of seva. I quote one incident, what seva essentially in the eyes of the Guru was. There was a Sikh who used to bring dry wood to the langar daily, and in return, he just used to partake food. One day, Guru just inquired, what do you do? He says, I bring wood to the langar and then partake food. Then Guru said, then it's all, then you bring wood and have langar in return. It is not seva. From that day, the man kept bringing wood, and one day, even in the way, in the dark, he fell into a well with the bundle of wood on his head. The water was shallow, and he kept shouting, take me out. He went all into water, but didn't allow the wood to get wet. This movement or its I don't go after what would have benefited the repeal, more than the repeal of laws. The amendments would have definitely benefited the farmer, which belongs to that section from where the girl came. That section of very small holdings, which Bhai Ashok Singh has pointed out. This section would have benefited, but now even the diaspora, there is a method in the liberal support of diaspora. Diaspora holds big chunks of land, absentee farmer, and they get very hefty land rent, which crushes that farmer, small farmer, who does the actual tilling. No, there was absolutely no program to help that section. Instead, this agitation, this is a big question. Now, when they say, will it make any difference when we return? And in terms of brotherhood, I didn't see, even when the support for the agitation was gathering, at the same time, there you could say announcements from the village gurdwaras against the Mazdoor who has been nominally included in the slogan, Kisan, Mazdoor, Ekta, Zindabad. Actually, there is no love lost, and after the return, no one will ever, I don't think, the mindset in which the self-serving section of the leadership, which has to benefit from the status quo, they have never bothered to address the distress of the small farmer. These are the questions. Thank you very much.
I'm thankful to the organizers to allow me a few minutes to share my thoughts. It is true that the repeal of these laws are not going to change the situation of the farming community or the farm laborers as it existed before these laws. However, it is equally true that these farm laws would have put another nail in the coffin of the farmers. So, the repeal of the farm laws is a big achievement. Otherwise, maybe in a year, 2 years, 3 years, in the coming near future, they would have lost their lands as per the total planning, and they would have turned into wage laborers, shifted from their villages to the urban slums. So that is the biggest achievement which we are not seeing today, which would have happened. As far as the laws are concerned, certain people may have difference of opinion and should have, that the amendments would have been better. Now, whatever the laws, who prevents any farmer or any village or any common land to contract out to any, you can say, the businessman or a group of farmers who want to do collective farming? Nobody is. Already contract can be done and it is being done. Who is preventing the trade of the farm produce? Nobody is preventing. Already a farmer can pick up his sugarcane, wheat, paddy, mustard, cotton from Punjab, maize, even to Maharashtra. Nobody can stop. It is already for a farmer, not for a trader. It was an openness for the trader, not for the farmer. So there is a third issue. Nobody is stopping the farmer to stock its grain or its produce, if he is able to do. But the condition not to stock beyond certain limits, not to create security, not to raise the prices, was on the trader, on the corporate. Through these laws, the same had been removed, that they can stock, they can raise the prices to skyrocketing. So whatever the former laws were doing, that has been undone. That does not mean at all that the status of the farmers, which existed before these laws, has been improved in any manner. But I agree with the youngsters, the hope, the unity, the women participation. Now, what was the women participation? It was not only an economic movement. It was really a social movement. That is why the state could not pump in bullets on them. In the social movement, I am a witness to it, in Punjab. Tens of lakhs of women participated in literacy campaign, particularly the Dalit and the women. The scheduled caste and the women participated in 90s in the literacy campaign because they felt empowered. That yes, I will quote just in 1 minute 2 examples. I was in Gadshankar, there was some film was being by the government of India. It was the government of India sponsored program, and I was the consultant of the government of India in those days. So the film was being prepared. Some ladies were sitting there. I thought they are already literate, and our people who are working there, they are trying to play a fraud. I called the person. I said, yeah, if nobody was studying, then why are you doing this drama? You could have told that. He said, no, this cannot be done. But please check yourself. I will also check. I asked the lady, I thought she must be a graduate. And I had no words to ask her. She could understand. What do I want? Just this is the empowerment. She could understand what do I want to ask. She said, we were asked that you just wear your clothes and you wash your face because film is to be prepared. Actually, I am a farmer labor, and she lifted her both feet, all are with mud, filled with mud. I have come directly from. Another lady I asked, I thought she must be a postgraduate. Very smart, young, a scheduled caste woman. I said, why do you want to study? Then I changed my question. She bowed down her head and she said, when I go to ration shop, he puts up the register before me and a pen and says, sign it. I have to tell, I don't know how to sign. I can put thumb impression. For telling this, that I have to put my thumb, even before me, she has to bow her head. Now this empowered her. It has not empowered her in his money, in his labor, in his maintenance of the family. It is the personality that, yes, I can also sign. So woman has been given power out of this, I will say, Andolan. No doubt, history always plays a role. Baabaniya, kahaniya, put. History has history in Punjab. So patriarchy, definitely in Punjab already it was not that much, but in Haryana it was a bit more. It has been hit by this struggle. Cooperation. Now the solution is, the further as Bhai Ashok Singh Bagdian ji has said, the solution is that we cannot go on practicing this model, which is on the artificial intelligence, minus labor, minus human capital. It is only concentration of all natural resources in the hands of few, and then do a mechanized farming or production, maybe even industry, with the help of AI, artificial intelligence, and push the human capital out. So it is not a sustainable model. It is against nature. And why Punjabis are fighting? Punjabis, the whole of the Guru Granth Sahib, Whole of the Sikh philosophy is pro-nature, pro-human, equality, fraternity. That is there, though we are not practicing that. But a major part of it is being practiced also, we are unable to see it. You go to any Gurdwara, I have not, in 74 years of my life, with this type of appearance, I have never seen, either in the historical Gurdwaras or in a village Gurdwara. As a smart student also, that we have been all, any time asked, you go because you are a Hindu, you go because you don't believe in Sikhism, the only thing you have to cover your head. That we have to accept. So, certain things are being done. We should accept that this struggle has given a new lease of life, which was not there to a democratic tradition in the state of Punjab, a fraternity in Punjab, Haryana and Uttar Pradesh. And I hope the SKM will even now maintain this unity while taking any decision after the repeal of these laws and what is to be done thereafter. Only request is through this house also that let SKM maintain its unity as the foreign laws have been repealed at the cost of democracy, our tradition, our constitution, by throwing all norms in the parliament. The SKM will not do it. SKM will maintain its unity so that the state does not come with a harsher attack after some time. Thank you.